Howdy friends, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to answer the question, when should I press my tinctures? Howdy friends. For those who are new here, hello, my name is Corinne and I am the clinical herbalist behind Spiraea Herbs and all the magic you see here at YouTube. Today I want to talk about whether or not there actually is a best time to press tinctures, what that is, what my thoughts are on it. If you don't know what pressing tinctures means, essentially it is the act of removing the herb material from your tinctures and all you're left with is the alcohol extraction. If you want more details, I actually have a video on what pressing tinctures means, and you can check that below, or I'll try to do the magic thing where I link it up top here. If not, just go to the description. It'll be the first link that you see. If you don't know what a tincture is, I do have a free tincture guide that you can snag, and that's below. But tinctures are alcohol extractions of herbs. So let me break it down. When you make a cup of tea and you pour hot water over dried herb material or fresh, if you've never had a fresh herb cup of tea, friends, you are missing out. But when you pour hot water over your tea, it's the water that is extracting the medicinal properties or, the fancy pants way of saying it, chemical constituents of the plants. When we make a tincture, it's alcohol. Now, there's a few reasons why people like to make tinctures. One, alcohol actually does a much better job at pulling out a wider range of medicinal properties. And two, it's got a way better shelf life. Tinctures can last a really, really long time. And so that tends to be why a lot of herbalists like using them. They also absorb faster in the stomach. So there's a lot of pros to them. Of course, some of the cons being cost due to alcohol, purchasing, if you're abstaining from alcohol for any reason, that can be a bit of a barrier. But in general, a lot of people really like working with tinctures. So today I actually have to press a whole bunch of tinctures. I'm starting to run low in clinic, and I thought, what better time than to talk about why I press them when I do. And I want to caveat, just mention, this is just my point of view and my opinion. I really want to avoid the whole, well, Corinne said. This is just the way that I understand things, my logic behind it. You do you. But if you're looking for an opinion, I'm glad you're here and I'll tell you about it. So first and foremost, here's one of the tinctures I have to press today. This is a burdock root tincture that I made on the 17th of May. So this was a spring tincture. That's interesting. I don't normally harvest roots in the spring. I do them in the fall. But there must have been a reason. We were probably digging it up, right? Pulling it out from the garden, and then I didn't want it to go to waste. But I made this back in 2017. So this actually is kind of a perfect example as to why I press my tinctures when I do. Short answer, simple answer, I don't press them until I need them. So this is actually my bottle of burdock root tincture that I pour from when I'm making custom herbal formulations for my clients, and it's almost empty. So I need to press this. I don't want lots and lots of these bottles sitting around in my apothecary shelves already pressed. And the reason for that is the act of pressing a tincture, and I'm going to demo this. I'm hopefully you're going to be watching it as I'm talking. The reason for that is the act of opening this up and pressing tinctures exposes the herbs and of course the tincture to a large amount of oxygen. So right away, my tincture is going to become more oxidized, right? So oxidation means that we're going to experience a degradation of the chemical constituents and the medicinal properties. We experience this when our food is exposed to oxygen and starts to rot in our fridge. Did you guys know that one of the ways that they increase the storage life or shelf life of things like apples is by storing them in large warehouses where they remove the oxygen? How cool is that? So then they can't oxidize. And so for me, I don't want to, I want to keep this, macerating, meaning the herbs are still swimming around in the alcohol. I want to keep this macerating for as long as possible to avoid oxidation. Another thing is that when I'm making tinctures in clinic for my clients, I am opening and closing this bottle all the time because most of the time I really only use about 20%. So in this case, that would be 50 milliliters. And this is a 500 milliliter bottle. So it takes me some time to go through this. Every time I open it, I'm exposing the tincture to more and more oxygen. So that's one of the big reasons why I only press tinctures when I need them. So general rule of thumb, if I haven't pressed a tincture, I am fine to leave jars. Now I have these, so yes, these are in clear. Ideally, I would have all my macerating tinctures in amber bottles too, if I could. But I have them stored in a closet where there's no light. So they're not being exposed to light. Light's another thing that causes oxidation and decreases the medicinal properties of a tincture. So of course, once I've pressed them, they go into these amber glass bottles in order to kind of slow that process down. Not necessary, but I make a lot of tinctures and I use a lot of them. So I really do try to keep the quality as high as possible because I am, providing them to people outside of my family and myself. But if the herbs are sitting and macerating in there, tinctures can last a really, 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 really long time. Like I'm talking decades, and they're still good to go. Once I have pressed a tincture, I try to use it up within a year. So I want you thinking along those lines when you're thinking about how big a bottle I want to use to make my tinctures. If it's just for you and your family, chances are you're not going to need 500 milliliters of burdock root tincture over a 1-year span. Now, this is going to take a little bit of playing and a little bit of experimenting, but I would always err on the side of a smaller jar and make more of them. So for example, I have 4 of these in my cabinet. I'm just going to press one right now. That's 2 full liters. So really, I could have made a tincture in a full 1-liter jar, but I don't want to do that. I want to leave that 1.5 liters sitting in my apothecary shelf, not exposed to oxygen, not exposed to heat, not exposed to light, just sitting there, happy, doing its thing. And I want to do that for as long as necessary. I have some tinctures that I made when I was first starting out in herbal medicine. And so some of them have been sitting there for 16 years and they're perfectly fine. But like I said, once I've pressed them, I like to use them up within a year. I'm quickly going to go over some equipment that you need for pressing tinctures. I do have videos on this as well. So I do encourage you to binge my channel, please. That's always helpful for the algorithm. So is hitting that like button. That's why we tell you to hit like, friends, because then my videos show up organically on other people's feeds. And that just helps to get even more amazing herbal information out into the world. But you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. I run a clinical practice. It's a pretty busy practice too. And I go through hundreds of liters of tincture a year, and I am still kicking it with my potato ricer. This is still what I use to press tinctures. And you actually would have seen that, on that overlay film there. So it kind of looks like a gibungus garlic press, doesn't it? And it actually works really well. If you get good quality ones, friends, please don't go to the dollar store. Look at all the water spots. Don't go to the dollar store and buy yourself a potato ricer, because the first time you squeeze this really hard and you're trying to strain out roots, you're going to bust this thing, right? So pay the money, get a good quality stainless steel one. If you're going to buy off Amazon and all that jazz, I've got links below. Make sure you're buying one that's really well reviewed and is actual stainless steel. But this is what I use. Nothing fancy, measuring cups, which we all probably have. And then I like to do a secondary strain with a small strainer. That's it. I've been holding off on buying a hydraulic tincture press because right now the exchange rate between Canada and the United States, or the Canadian dollar and the American dollar, is not so favorable. And the $2,000 or $3,000 hydraulic tincture press is more like $4,000. One day. But for now, I'm still getting by using my garlic press. Now, potato ricer. If you don't want to buy one of these, you can totally kick it old school and use some cheesecloth and wring out your herbs. There's nothing wrong with that. Lots of people do that. You can use like those reusable cotton coffee filters and squeeze that too. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. You just get more end product, meaning you can squeeze more out if you use some type of a manual machine like this. All right, that's it. That's all, friends. I've got some tinctures to press, so I've got to get to work. If you have questions, please, as always, drop them in the comments below. I'm usually pretty good at getting back to people. I try to check at least once a day and answer all of your questions. And until next time, this is Corinne from Spiraea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.